I think. Oh wait, no, I didn't. Woo, okay, it's working. We're gonna turn the burners on. And if you don't have the roasting pan, okay, I have one on. I'm like, which one's cooking, guys? It just clicks. Okay, because it's not on the, it's on.
They're clicking.
You guys came to see a professional cook, right? You're going to basically take everything that's in the pan, you're going to turn the burners on high, you're going to cook off all the liquid and everything, and you're going to get down to just the fat that's left in the pan, and you're going to have these highly concentrated bits in there. And from there, we are not going to take out a measuring cup, you're not going to take out a tablespoon, but you're going to eyeball the amount of fat that's left in there, and you're going to say, I think this is 3 tablespoons, or I think this is a 1/4 cup. And whatever the difference between that and 1/2 cup is, you are going to add that to butter. You're welcome. And from there, you're going to melt the butter. Okay, oh, I'm so excited. You're going to melt the butter. Try to turn this up a little hotter. Does the back burner work?
Yeah, it does. Here, so I can use it. If I turn the other one on higher, it'll probably light on opposite.
Okay.
It's just making every once in a while.
Hey, we did it! You're going to turn out, then you're going to add the difference between that and the butter, and then you're going to continue just like this. But if you do not have the drippings and you do not have the turkey roasting pan, you can do this just in a saucepan. You can also do it hours before you cook. You could do this a day or 2 before you make the turkey, and you could rewarm it afterwards. What I love about this recipe is that even if you don't have all the great turkey parts, or like maybe, does anyone smoke turkeys in Manhattan? That would be a little crazy, right? Okay, well, I was just in Texas. A lot of people smoke turkeys. They will fry. What?
fried turkey.
It is so good. But both with fried and smoked. Well, smoking, you don't really want the drippings, and fried, you're not going to have drippings, but this is really good to keep this formula in mind. And the formula is 1/2 cup of butter, which will eventually melt. I'm just not used to using a nice stove, guys. What is this? This is so fancy. Give me a simmer setting. 1/2 cup of butter, and then we're going to use salt and pepper. I usually put a little splash of Madeira or Marsala in there. It's not about getting my grandma drunk. I'm grandma, by the way. This is just about the flavor and building an extra layer in there. So I usually cook it off completely, and then you add the flour, and then it's basically like making a bechamel. There we go, as one does. And then it's basically like making a bechamel, but instead of using milk, you're using broth. Okay, so while we were waiting for the butter to melt, ask me anything. Come at me. Ask me questions about Thanksgiving. What are you cooking? What are you stressing about?
Do you not separate your fat from your drippings first?
So I don't. You can. So I said there is 3 methods. The first one is just this with no drippings. I would say the third one is you've got the turkey drippings. The second one, which is probably the one I do the least, you can go ahead and separate it, and then you can use the liquid in place of some of the broth, and you could use the fat in place of some of the butter. I don't love doing it because it's fussier, and also because if you just cook all that liquid off, you can still get the flavor in there. There's usually not that much. It might just be a cup. It might take 5 or 10 minutes. You still have the flavor. But you didn't have to go through the fussiness, but the liquid will cook off, but the fat won't. So you can still get it in there, even if you're using a weakly flavored or bouillon-based broth. You still get that flavor back in there. When you're done with that whole thing, this is the drippings pan. When you're done with the whole thing, you can go ahead and strain it so you get a smooth sauce. But honestly, the bits are too delicious.
Scrape up all the brown bits.
Yeah, you do, because it's gonna have such good. I was saying you can strain it when you're done, but like, yeah, I mean, you've got a lot. If you're hosting, you have a lot going on that day. If you don't get your turkey gravy, oh my God, this is really splattering, guys. Woo, fun. All right, I'm gonna dump the flour in a little faster, just so we don't walk out with 2nd-degree butter burns. Any other questions while I am?
Yeah.
Cooking?
The flour doesn't get all clumpy? You're going to show us how not to.
Maybe. Usually the flour does not get clumpy, but one of the demos I did, it got super clumpy and I never unclumped it, and I was like, just kidding, I don't know what's happening here. Wow, okay. Like, everyone's phone's okay. No, if you added, you could actually add all the broth at once, but I do find that it's a little less lump prone if you add it a little bit at a time. It also allows you to control for thickness. In general, this formula I'm using, half a cup of butter, 2/3 of a cup of flour, and 8 cups of broth, pretty much makes the perfect consistency, but there's always a little variety day to day. So I might hold back a little and just add more when I know I want it. Ask me anything.
You mentioned you could fridge or freeze in advance. I
Mhm.
find when I fridge or freeze when I thaw it, it sort of breaks kind of into chunks.
You know, did I say you could freeze it? I was just thinking, I'm not sure I've actually ever frozen. I've definitely put
I've
it in the
tried.
fridge for a couple days before.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to think about that one. So I'm trying to think of how I would.
Bring it back together.
Yeah, I feel like if I was gonna do that, I would probably just maybe, if that was a risk, I would probably just keep the roux separate and maybe just work it back in at the end. You know, like maybe you've got the broth and the drippings, and then maybe you just do this part. You've got this in one thing, and it might be a little easier. Yeah, I have to know, but definitely in the fridge I haven't had an issue. I do usually rewarm it more slowly, and then I'm whisking a little bit as I go just to make sure it doesn't separate. All right, and remember, you can do this in a pot. It doesn't have to be in the roasting pan. All right, now that I've got the flour and the butter all mixed, here's where I'm going to add just a little squash. Okay, I just love the flavor it adds, and you're probably gonna say, Deb, what am I gonna do with an entire bottle of marsala now that I've opened it to use 2 tablespoons for the gravy? And the answer is that I've had the same bottle of marsala in my fridge for about 5 years. We're not drinking it, we're using it for cooking. So every time I make like my chicken marsala meatballs with the egg noodles in my second book, or you're making the mushroom marsala pasta bake on my site, which is so good for Thanksgiving, by the way, in addition to everything else you're cooking. I use it for that. It's a fortified wine. I'm not saying it would be drinking quality a couple years later, but it's not like rancid or nasty in any way. So that's my answer. Just keep it and find things that use marsala. Yeah? Oh no, I thought you had a question. Now you have to ask a question. The pressure is on.
What's your thought on roux in a microwave?
I've never done it before. Is it supposed to save time? I feel like I would just burn it. I feel like I can't control
It burns less in the microwave.
But I think you want a little color on it, or it's gonna be like.
You can take it all the way to gumbo color.
I didn't know that. But then you still have to switch to a pot, or are you making the entire gravy in it? Is this a Cook's Illustrated thing? I don't know.
They might have done it. I feel like it's a Cajun thing because you got to get your roux so dark
Otherwise,
that you're
gonna
gonna
spend
burn
3
it or
hours
fall
on the
asleep.
stove.
Yeah.
I usually try to get a little color on the roux, but I'm not going like full gumbo black here. So I'm just adding the liquid a little at a time. I mean, I'm supposed to have the confidence to add more at a time, but I just don't. I just feel better adding, like, at least for the first couple cups, a little bit, just to make sure there's no major lumps forming. They will come out with whisking, but you could also do less work by adding it slowly. Any other questions? Ask me anything.
Could you make a vegetarian gravy?
Absolutely, and that's another reason I like this formula. I've absolutely made it with vegetable broth before for people who don't eat meat, and that just means that a nice like dark vegetable stock, something with like real flavor to it, can be really nice here. Although I'm honestly using Better Than Bouillon more than once. I love their stuff. They have a dark, I don't know if they call it dark vegetable broth, but they have one of their vegetable broths is really dark. And then they have this they have this thing they call no chicken base, which is one of my absolute there's no artificial chicken flavor and there's no chicken ingredients in it, but it gives you that sort of golden chicken soup flavor, but just from vegetables. So I think that's a brilliant one. But for this, I would probably use the darker one. I just feel like it really gives you it's a really good flavor for a vegetable broth. Woo! This whisk handle is not heat-proof. So I'm finding out. All right, ask me anything while I'm whisking a roux.
For the lump, I grew up using Wonder Flour to make all of my gravies. And I've always been
Are you from the
surprised
South?
it doesn't show up. Yeah.
I don't know why it's never made crossover in the North the same.
I have a can of it, they sell it up here.
No, I bought it once for like fried green tomatoes. That was it, which just meant that my tomatoes had done really badly that year and I had to pick them. No, I hear it's really great for it. Generally, when I'm writing recipes, I'm writing them for the thing most people can use. So yeah, I think Wonder Flour makes amazing gravy, but I'd rather show you what you could do with the flour you might already have. So that's generally my goal, but I agree with you that it makes a really nice, it's also really nice for coating things like, fried green tomatoes. All right. Anything? Anyone? Anybody else? Does anyone's family not do gravy? Wow, so it's
Why bother?
Wow, it really just is my husband's family. That's so weird how I'm roasting them in public like this. They do gravy now for me. Actually, no, they call me into the kitchen and I make the gravy now. But no, I don't know. Not everyone does gravy. I don't fully understand it because I'm definitely in it for the gravy, as you can see with the care and attention I'm putting towards getting this golden flavor perfect. All right, well, to each their own. If the turkey's good enough, maybe it doesn't need it, but I'll probably never find out. I'm definitely dumping gravy on it. In fact, I think it's the intersection. People think of like Thanksgiving flavors as being like the turkey or the stuffing, but I think it's that weird intersection of like all 8 things that you're gonna eat on one plate with gravy in the middle. I think that's what actually tastes like Thanksgiving, where you're suddenly having like the clash of the cranberry sauce and the potatoes and the green beans all at once. All right, I'm starting out a little more because I think we're pretty safe from lumps right now. I'm more worried about splashing everybody, so I'm trying to go careful. Any other questions about any part of Thanksgiving? I don't want to put you guys to sleep watching me whisk a roux here.
What's your turkey prep? Brine, dry brine, no brine?
I am a dry brine to the end. I really like the dry brine. I only have one turkey recipe, and it's on my site, and it's on the Williams-Sonoma site this fall. I love the dry brine. I did the wet brine one year, and it was probably the most stressful thing I've ever done. I did get those giant, those Ziplocs? You're like, why are they making Ziplocs this large? Okay, so I got one of those brining bag things, and I was using it, and the weight of it with the turkey and the liquid, it opens. It doesn't matter how well you seal it. If there is a millimeter speck where it's not sealed, I'm telling you, I was mopping the floor multiple times, wiping down the fridge dust. My mother is a retired microbiologist, so my fear of this brine, you could say it maybe is like excessive, but I actually think it was pretty like well-based in reality. It was so stressful, and I will never do it again. It's just, I have heard from people since, because I have I'm very lucky to have a very active commenting section. So I've heard lots of good tips. One of the best tips I heard, and I would do this if I tried it again, is that people say they take their produce drawer in their fridge, they scrub it out, sanitize it, and they use that for brining the turkey for a day before. So I might do that, but also mine definitely has a crack in it, so that wouldn't work either. But I feel like you really get just as good moisture from the dry brine without having to go through that stress. It's so much easier, it's so much neater, and you get that great skin. The other thing is, if you're buying like a nice heritage bird at the Union Square Green Market, a few days before Thanksgiving, the wet brine can kind of wash more of the flavor out of that. It's great if it's sort of a bland bird, but you might actually want to taste it. I feel like the dry brine, by not adding liquid, but just preserving the liquid that's there, you really get to heighten the flavor. So that would just be my advice, not just for small spaces, but just for like not wanting to wash the floor extra times when the stuff keeps spilling. It was such a nightmare. But for me, not that you asked, but since you guys gave me the mic, here I go, mouthing off. I feel strongly that I don't really care. I don't find it better with the wet brine, but even if it was slightly better, it's not worth it to me if it's such a miserable experience. Like if we hate cooking and we're mopping the floor and wiping down every shelf, what was the point if it was 2 degrees more moist? I'm not gonna find out, I won't do it again. So that's just a little central philosophy for me here. All right, so I think you guys get the idea here. I did not season this yet, and you're definitely gonna season. Now, if you're using your own drippings, and you probably have a very well seasoned bird, because you guys would never forget to season your food, I would probably wait on the seasoning until I tried it a bit, but since I know we're just using a stock base here, I know that we can, pretty much add a couple teaspoons of salt and a nice amount of pepper safely. But if you were starting with the drippings and then cooking them off and then, rehydrating them, you're gonna have something that's already starting off really seasoned, and I would probably taste it a couple more times before adding anything. I'm gonna add more of the liquid, but you can see we're getting to about the right texture. And then once you do, the place that you're happy with it, I would let it simmer for about 5 or 10 minutes just to cook off that floury taste, and then you're done. You can put it on the back burner until later in the day, or you can, refrigerate it for a couple days if you want to get ahead on it. All right, does everyone feel good about this? We've got this? Okay. We can add a little more broth, but I wanted to move on to the pie dough before we run out of time. Okay. Yay. All right, over here. I'll turn this off. Okay. Just like my real kitchen, there's somebody who comes up behind me and makes sure I don't make any mistakes. Okay, who here makes their own pie dough? Who here makes their own pie dough for Thanksgiving? No. Who else chooses their battles for Thanksgiving besides the pie dough isn't worth it? I think that's fair and valid. But who here has made pie dough and they feel like they think something always goes wrong?
Every time.
Okay, so I'm your pie therapist tonight, and I want you to tell me what goes wrong so that we can walk through it, because it's not like that exciting to watch me whisk flour, salt, and sugar. Ask me anything. I'm just starting here with 2.5 cups of flour. This is like my most basic, all butter, really flaky pie dough, but it's less about, I mean, the recipe is perfect, obviously, it's mine. No, but it's much more about the way that we do it. And the biggest thing that I think people run into when they make pie dough is just the heat. It's the warmth. Like, it's warm in here right now, and this butter is going to soften too fast. And the enemy of pie dough is warm, because butter, when it's warm, is soft, it's oily. You're gonna be like, oh, this is so hard to roll out, it's getting greasier, I'm going to add more flour. The answer is just to keep everything cold. You could even take this bowl with the flour and the sugar and pop it in the freezer and keep it there until you're ready to use it, especially if you're working in a perhaps warm New York City kitchen with a giant heat pipe in the corner trying to kill you. Sorry, that sounded really personal because it's true. I have the hottest kitchen. So yeah, things get warm really fast. I use my freezer a lot, but the freezer, it's much easier to just cool it down for 5 minutes in the freezer or in the fridge for maybe 10 or 15 than it is to fight it. We're not gonna fight pie dough. Things going on at Thanksgiving.
Do you put sugar in there?
I put a little bit of sugar in. You don't have to. I always just put a little bit in, but I also kind of put in a little more salt than other people. I kind of like it to have a real flavor. So I was gonna say, if you want to take the sugar out of the pie dough, I would take out some of the salt too. Like, if you're gonna have the sugar, and I think it's just a tablespoon of sugar and a full teaspoon of salt.
I don't mind the sugar, it just makes it harder to roll.
It's not a significant amount. I think it's mostly just keeping it. And this is also great when I don't use fancy butter to make pie dough. Like, I mean, that's great if you've got it. I use fancy butter for like spreading on sourdough bread or making really good shortbread. But I don't really use it for like pie dough. So, you know, this is a good time to, you know, make sure it's well seasoned and well flavored. This is obviously with, not obviously, this is with unsalted butter. With salted butter, I would not add extra salt at this point. All right, ask me anything. I'm using, okay, so you can work the butter into the flour. You can use your fingertips. You can like kind of smash all the bits. You could use a food processor and blend it. You can use your stand mixer with a paddle attachment. You can do any of these things. I just really like using the pastry blender. And I feel like, as I'm talking to New Yorkers, I could explain this, that when I did not have a dishwasher, it used to drive me crazy that the food processor is a minimum of 5 parts to hand wash. And it just didn't seem worth it just for this. So I started using the pastry blender, and I got really into it because I like the control you have. My hands aren't warming it up. I'm not making like a huge mess here. And then when I'm done, I just take the dough out of here and then I make the filling in here. So it's a 1 bowl pie. Nothing else about pie is that simple, but it's a 1 bowl pie. I can market it like that. All right, so I'm working these pieces a little bit smaller. Ask me anything. Hi.
What are your thoughts on lard versus butter?
I think lard is delicious. I would still probably put some butter in because I love the butter flavor. I did not grow up with lard pies for many reasons. Many reasons, both cultural and just my own bad luck. But I know that the flavor and that the flakiness is incredible. I would probably do half-half if you had it, or maybe 1/3, 2/3. But if you're used to it and it's what tastes like home to you, definitely use it. I feel the same way about shortening. We did half-half pies growing up, but these days I go all butter because I'm much more into the flavor. But I'd say if you really like that lightness of the flake from the shortening, you could use half-half as well. Anything?
Do you always use water, or have you ever substituted like alcohol or vinegar?
I have done vinegar. I've done a splash of buttermilk. I've done the vodka thing that Kenji does with Cook's Illustrated. I feel like I've tried everything over the years, and I haven't noticed a significant difference. So in general, I use what's closest to me, which is a carafe of water from the fridge. I like the buttermilk thing, but I just didn't find a massive difference in it. Like, I'll use more of a tangy ingredient when I make my galette dough, which is a little wetter. and a little softer, but it's not as good for holding heavy ingredients like pecans or, you know, pumpkin pie. But I think if you're using it and you're happy with the way it comes out, continue. But I don't think that if you don't have it, you're really going to be missing anything in the final pie.
If your butter's leaking out of your crust in the oven, does that mean it wasn't chilled enough before it went in?
If the crust at the end tastes like the texture isn't right, then maybe too much had come out. But the truth is that anything that has butter bits in it is going to have butter, like, and we just notice it because we're in front of it. So I would say ignore what's happening. I mean, you could watch, as one does, on TikTok or a video of croissants baking, and you'll see butter leaking out. The fact is that there's butter inside. Some of the pieces are going to make it to the outside and they're going to leak out. So as long as it doesn't even matter how much leaks out. If the final texture tastes right to you, it does not matter what leaked out. I would say one thing that I've probably changed in what I recommend over the years is I would say you can get much smaller with the bits than I originally thought when I was a beginner cook. I would go a little, the biggest might be the size of small peas, but you can really go with that rough cornmeal, like couscous. What's a good texture? Lima bean, not lima bean, lentils. Like you can really get those small bits, and I find that it doesn't ruin the texture of the pie, and that might give you a little more protection against visible leakiness. But the reality is that some of the butter is always going to be on the outside, so ignore it. Sort of like when you make one of my galettes with fruit in them, like some of the juices are always going to run out, and it does not mean that the galette that's left tastes bad, so ignore it. Anything else? Almost there. I was working with frozen butter at a demo last night, and we were here for a long time. For a very long time.
Do you chill everything?
I do chill everything. I want to make it easy.
I've been chilling everything forever.
Yeah, cold fridge water or ice water.
Cold butter, I even chill the flour.
Yeah, chill everything, especially if your
chill the
kitchen's
dough
warm.
and then chill when it's rolled out.
It just buys you more time before it gets stressful, and then I just try to work fast, basically. And that's also for me why I don't put my hands in there. I just find that it warms up faster. So I hate picking like floury bits out from under my fingernails. Sensory thing, I don't know. I don't like it. It's not my favorite. So, all right. So we are in a good place here. I broke it. Not my first or last one. Don't trust me with your hand blenders. But it is nice to get one with really. This is a good thing to buy in person when you're looking at them and not online. So you want to feel that it really has some.
The wire ones.
You don't want the wire ones at all, because I have utter faith in mine, and I will actually just start with a whole stick of butter and chop it with that, but it's not an official recommendation of what you should do with the products in the store. I don't want to get in trouble. And now I'm going to add cold water. I know this is measured and it's the correct amount, but I'm still going to eyeball it and make sure it looks right to me. Once again, I'm kind of keeping my hands out of it for as long as I can. And I'm just going to use this spatula and try to mix it until it looks like it's, I don't know, about 2/3 to 3/4 coming together in like a big, do you guys have like the mirror thing here? This is so cool. I need that.
Do you mind showing it?
Oh yeah, oh, what? Yes. I'm cooking. What a concept, guys. Actually, this is pretty close. I feel like because it's pretty warm in here. I'm gonna add a little bit more. I think if you add too much water, nothing bad's gonna happen. It might take a little longer to bake, but eventually the water is gonna bake out and you'll be fine. But in general, I think it's a little easier to stay on the dry, crumbly side, which is exactly where we are here, where most of it's coming together just with a spoon. And then when I feel I've taken it about as far as I can, that's when I might knead it together once or twice with my hands and bring it together. But I mean, honestly, I'm trying to touch it as little as possible. And then I would divide this in half. And I would wrap each piece in a piece of parchment, or if you're gonna put it in the freezer until like early next week, I would wrap it in 2 layers of plastic wrap. But that's it. Make 2 little discs. I think a lot of the questions I've gotten are about rolling it out.
Yes. Yeah.
Is it the cracks?
Yeah.
Do you know why the cracks form? I have a scientific reason.
No.
They can tell you're stressing. You're in a rush.
Just not gonna roll it. That's the hard
They're
part.
just like, I got it. I have a plan for this one.
I love that.
They're there to humble you. Actually, I think all it is just rushing. I think when we were, so you're gonna start with this like disc that's like maybe 1 inch thick, and you're like, all right, let's go. I've been like working my biceps. I've got this. I'm gonna flatten this out in no time. Actually, don't want to do that. You want to go slower. In the beginning, I start with like a really well floured counter. I may not pick it all up, but I'd rather have extra flour at the top. And I just start rolling it out. Almost picture just lowering it like a millimeter at a time, or a couple really slow. I turn it, roll it, turn it, and I just keep doing that. And when you get to like, now it's maybe half an inch thick, at that point it starts stretching out a little more easily, and you can go a little heavier with the rolls. But in the beginning, when you're trying to get it from that like 1 inch thick to like pie thick, that's when the big cracks. You can seal them up. It's just stressful. Like it's like extra, it's an extra thing you need to do. So I think going slower with the rolling in the beginning, just taking it down gently. I know we're all like massively muscular and we can definitely handle this, but like going a little slower, I feel like really just you're coaxing it into a flat shape. You're not forcing it, because it doesn't like a toddler. It doesn't like being, it likes to be coaxed, not forced. I don't know anything about this at all. And that's it. So you're gonna have your dough, and I would normally just cut it in half. I do not weigh it, I do not measure it, because if one piece is a little bigger and one piece is a little smaller, that's perfect. You often want a slightly bigger piece if you're doing a decorative top anyway, so it's fine. The main thing is I just try to get it chilling as soon as possible. This looks perfect. If it doesn't, you didn't notice anything. Were there any other questions? My internal clock, which is sometimes good, says we have 3 minutes left. Am I correct?
You have 3 minutes, 30 seconds left. You're good.
What am I ever going to do with this life skill? My weird thing is I'm like, the timer's going to go off in 8 seconds. I can feel it. All right, so we have 3 minutes. You can ask me anything while I wrap this up.
Are you cooking anything?
Yes. I'm cooking, I'm not cooking the turkey, but I have a little sticky note that I photographed that when my mother and I were planning what we were going to cook. I think I'm going to do a couple salads. I just did like the work. I think I'm going to do a couple salads. I'm either going to make the green bean casserole, or I'm going to make the green bean salad with the fried almonds on my site. I think we might, so my feeling when you're planning sides is that one thing needs to be creamy. And I think my mother-in-law is going to make the root vegetable gratin that I've adapted from Ina Garden. It's on my site from a bunch of years ago. She loves that one. So that might be the creamy thing. So then maybe we don't need the creamy green bean casseroles. I think you need something green, something orange, something creamy and decadent, something salady, gravy, stuffing, cranberry sauce, schnapps. And then everything else is just extra. But I feel like when those like things are covered, and when you're trying to choose recipes for Thanksgiving, I feel very strongly about this, that if you are the person who's bringing a dish, you can bring any recipe. Like go get a complicated one, go show off. But if you are making multiple things, those ingredient lists add up. When you're making a salad with 10 ingredients and it's one of 10 things you're making, you will beg your future self to not make this salad again. I think when there's a salad with 5 ingredients or a side dish that's just salt, pepper, and lemon, this is the time. And when you're bringing something, you can go be a little fancier with it. So I feel like look at the ingredient list, because those start adding up and you start to feel like you're losing your mind. As somebody who made my fall bliss salad last weekend or 2 weekends ago, plus 3 other things, I'm like, this is a lot of ingredients. It's a great centerpiece salad, but it's not a centerpiece salad if you're making everything else. All right, I hope that helps.
What's a good vegetarian center?
A good vegetarian center is, I feel like everyone always does a pasta bake, and it's fine, you can. I think my first choice would probably be the winter squash and the spinach pasta bake that's on the site. It's like you bake it in a spring form. I love how pretty it is. But there's also something else I'm not thinking of that I'm going to think of right after that I think. I also think the pizza beans would not be unwelcome.
Those are good.
But
then you need garlic bread, because pizza beans without garlic bread is...
I just want you to know that whether it's traditional or not, you can make garlic bread for Thanksgiving, and like it will disappear first, no matter how good the turkey is. It just has there's just something about it.
Doesn't like her.
By the way, you guys can see I'm not even like, I just use the plastic or the paper to shape it. I just don't want to get it any warmer. Well, I mean, obviously it's just really warm, but I don't want to mess with it any more than I have to. Into the fridge, and then we forget about it until we're ready for that. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you guys.